Hello out there, James here. Good morning to you, good day to you, wherever you at. Good afternoon. If my picture seems like it's dark, it's the sun. It's like been going in and out, and it's like a bright light, and trying to adjust the. I don't know if you can see me or not, but the light is in the room. You never know what daylight with the sun, how the sun go act out and everything. I made this video. It came to me, as I know it was, I believe it was God that had me say this morning. And prior to events, people still talking about the incident about Georgia, and what happened down there in Kentucky, and why was someone like Grandmaster Jay why did he come? Why did he bring a group full of militia, people that got together to form a militia? And it's much, when I heard the man talk, I really come to the conclusion it was deeper than what it is at this period in time in history. And he definitely made history at this point in time. And the reason why I say he made history was this. For a time like this, there had to be people had to come forth, and sometimes this was the time, it was the season, and it's been so much injustice have been in the earth, and sometimes, although there's people getting killed around the world, there's there's wars going around the world as we speak, but when it came to things concerning in this country, there are people still dying. They're dying by plagues. They're dying with the coronavirus. There's people getting murdered, and sometimes people get murdered every day. But when it came to the racial makeup of people, life is less valued because in this country, because when you're part of a certain ethnic racial group, people don't find you very valuable. When you live in a certain community, especially in poverty, people don't find you valuable. So what happened is that you have to have someone on the rise that's willing to take the injustice of people and be the model to confront why is it that this thing has happened? Why is it that the evil that has been done just because of the makeup of your community, why is it's less serious than someone who's of a wealthier or higher community that has a certain demographic of people? And as I was thinking about this as I was preparing my breakfast. And despite the history and events, and I know some people say, why black people always got to complain? Why black people, don't they have it better by now? And I've heard comments about that. I heard comments saying that they get the most out of the most. First, let me be on record to say black people don't get the most by the most. And you can't take a certain percentage of black people and equate them to, they must be all wealthy, they must be all privileged. And because no, it's not, because it's not showing when it comes to the justice system. It's not showing when it comes to the healthcare system. It's not shown equally. There's not, and why is the systemic racism that has been plaguing from decade to decade, from century to century. And every time when there was a person out of the community, when it comes to the original people, next to one of the original people in America is blacks, every time they try to rise, someone changes the course. Then they come to find out later on, you still was never considered a citizen under the Constitution. And the reason why the things was happening back in the past is because black people were never considered citizens, so they were treated like second-class citizens. So from what he was reading, from the 1865 to 1964, black people in this country was never free. And they were never free. So that's why when something would happen to the individual based on crime, based on anybody do something, just depends on what the racial makeup, what it was. Other people would see partial justice. African Americans would see no justice whatsoever from back then. And then you go past 1964 and all the way up to now, all the way up, there was never no complete justice for someone can put it person. Now long it was another black person committing a crime on another black person, they'll get time. But when it came to just simply by the racial makeup of the person's skin color, they would do longer time for what offense that it was. This goes all the way up to even to this day to the state house, to the White House. So therefore, all this injustice that had to come forth. So each time in each decade there was starting from back in the 1920s and 30s, there were individuals that were coming on the rise, and there was representation that was out of the black community, in that they were never really taken seriously. They appointed him, but long if they appoint the black person, that he has to go by their rules. He has to come and talk and be like them, and they can dictate and control him as long as he put the focus on whatever that they want, and not what his community of people want. That would include having full access to full citizenship. So this went on for a while. That's why you had all these civil rights people like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and these different organizations rise up, because as long as you keep a certain segment of people over them, just to make it seem like they're being fair, but at the same time they can do an underhanded adjust. There was a time where African Americans had their own towns. No one knows this in the histories, and I didn't even really know about it till 10, 15 years ago, that there was a Tulsa, Oklahoma, there was a Homestead, Florida, there was places near Manhattan, New York, that there were American blacks that had their own business, they had their own towns, they were productive, they were military, some come out of the military, some were ex-slaves, they did own things on their own, they raised towns, they had craft, and they made different, shoe repair business, haircut business, salon business. Women were doing their thing, and men were doing their thing, professional business, and they locked it into the community like you see in different parts of the country today. If you go up in Flint, Michigan, there's the Middle Eastern community that they call it. You used to consider the Arab American community. In the Arab American community, there's every business that the kids speak English, but they speak their native tongue with their parents and their relatives. And this is true. You could go up into like Flint, Michigan, and out of the Arab American community, you have Iranians, you have Syrians, you have Palestinians, you have Iraqis and Egyptians and Libyans these are the people who are descended from mostly Muslim nations, and they're basically labeled the Arab, whatever is labeled the Arab Americans. So they got their own community, and like rightfully so, because they got businesses such as grocery stores, gas stations. They have and a lot of they have businesses, car dealerships, all different type of business that the Arab Americans, like in places like Flint, Michigan, and I think somewhere in New Jersey, that they have, and they put their feet on the ground, and they lock their own town and business. Now there's other business along them, but majority of the businesses that the Arab American, and there's a representation that who come out of, when they get their people together, they have someone to go and represent them in their community, out of the, which is out of the Christian Muslim community from up there, and from whoever speak their language, from their homeland back in the Middle East. So the same thing that happened to them is the same thing that what African Americans had, the same thing all throughout the country. It's not like they came in. African Americans were just lazy, that they just popped up. They went from slavery. Like, okay, now you free. You don't want to do nothing. And they just went around and just shuff and jive. African Americans was trying to grab jobs, and when they left slavery and went from generation to generation, they could. Some of them had to go back on the see, and then go back and work for the person who they was a slave up under. Some of them stayed down south, and that's where. So that's why there was such a loyalty with some black people, because they don't, and they were put to generations to feel this way. Okay, that's why some black people, and you see some black people from down south that still, because they adopted the mentality of that the slave masters did down south, and some of them I seen even support the flag, and this is the truth. It's not a whole lot, but there's a select ones that do, because they adopted to this. So they adopt the mentality of the people that was a slave. And even though we see that in history, in which they try to erase history out of the book, that they didn't do all these atrocities to African Americans, that they didn't go out there and some of the slave masters didn't go out there and rape them and had sex with their wives and children and anything else. They want to erase this history. They want to erase the fact that they broke that another grown human being, and they refer to him like you refer to your animal, like you're my possession, my property. You have no opinion because I own you, and this went on for generations. And so a certain percentage of African Americans wasn't getting the proper education like you see in different parts of the world, and so they neglected this, because as long you can control the mechanism of people and control their power and their thinking, you have them under control. So here, generation after generation after generation, African Americans will get the second to best nut. I mean, this went on, this continually on all the way up to this day, that they don't want to give full access to quality like other people. Even other people have come over from different parts of the world, and that they're able to get the access to. They always told the American blacks in this country, like, you equal, despite we're gonna take a certain percentage of you, and we're gonna, but we don't want the hopefully that the rest of you would get discouraged and die. Basically, you fit the survival and fit. So what a lot of people in the community fell for this, what they call the Willie Lynch letter. What is, some people say that the Willie Lynch letter doesn't exist, but the spirit of the Willie Lynch letter that does. But who was Willie Lynch? He was the kind of person, and he said, I guarantee you, if you did this to the American black slaves, you would have them fighting among each other for the next 150 years. This was a letter that you can find on the internet. So what he did was, he took the biggest to the smallest of the slaves and separated them up. He took the lightest of the slaves by the pigment of their skin and separated them up. He took the most intelligent ones, and this is what other slave masters did, and separate the ones that were not intelligent, the ones that wanted to be so-called rebellious. And he used this, and he told the people of that day to, this is how you infiltrate this method on these blacks back then that were slaves. And you keep the ones that's uneducated. And if you if you educate the slaves, if you were white or black, getting caught letting black people know about reading and writing and arithmetic, you were literally hung and lynched, beaten in some cases. This happened on the American shores. My friends from around the world, this is what will happen. So black people, that's why black people can't just get over something when people make that statement. Why don't they just get over it? The spirit of it is still lingered to this day. It still lingers out from back then, and it transformed from one situation to another situation. It transformed from every decade that it followed African Americans. It followed. And so if you put a people in the destitute, make them feel like they don't, if you discriminate against housing, if you discriminate against your job, if you subjugate them in education, you subjugate them in the judicial system and with the hospital, then you have control of them. Even if you select a few, they're only going to, and even though that everybody, when you get on the company's job, however, if you do something and have an average mistake, it gets the cost. But when you were African American, it can almost mean that if you don't do what you say, you're simply fired, because the justice system don't always good. Even when you own a job, it even means your own career. So some people even play biases continually up to this day. This started back when, during the time when early America was first started. The African American family have always had to make 20 cents less than their white counterparts. This is documented, ladies and gentlemen. Black people never always had the luxury. They had to make do. If you take a 2 men or labor, the white male can get paid $2 more. The black male labor had to get 50 cents to $1 to 50 to doing the same exact job, the same exact employment, the same, no matter, even if it was up in the profession, from to labor to the millennial jobs, from every sector, from farming and everything. They were always trying to rob black people. No matter they were from the country, because they feel like they lived there. They know what they were doing. They didn't have the mental capacity of handling their own math, because there's a spirit in the land that these are the what I call the low intelligent, low hanging fruit people. That they're never going to learn. There are some people that there were white people at that time all the way to now that still think that black people are still like this, and they convince other people that black people would never get to the status, because look at what the environment that they came from. Look, that's why they do all that. So the media paints a picture that there are, even though there's some criminality that's going on, that they put the picture that when you see the image, this is what you think of them. That they're barbaric. This is what they do. That they have no intelligence. Now, here goes. So even if you go down to Washington D.C., I suggest you go to the African American Museum and you find more about our find who we really are, not for what was been projected from generation after generation. And so you have these individuals that rose up in the 40s and in the 50s that were blacks were getting hung, they were getting justified, they were getting what they call red-lighted and coded. They would get arrested for things that just for walking down the street. Some would even get lynched. So this is how ugly America really was. They would just lynch you. If they feel like we're gonna have a picnic today, back in the 20s and 30s, what they call a picnic, they would call a pick an inn and hang them up on a tree, and they would celebrate. There's pictures online of this. So black people had to go in this country had to go through terror. This was after the slavery. This is well after going into the 19th century. This is what some people don't understand. And so lynchings went from that time into the 19th century all the way up into practically the 21st century. That's why I said the spirit of this never died. So they have different individuals that rise to the rank. And it's not until the Medgar Evers and the Martin Luther Kings, and before him was the Marcus Garvey. So Marcus Garvey was the first one, prime example, for the man during his time, said, "Don't lynch my people. You know, if you got this much hatred and animosity, and because they're taking your jobs or they're taking your way of life, let's go back to Africa, and we can form our own. Let us go. Because you don't have to keep making these laws." This is what Marcus Garvey was trying to do. So, but but this country didn't want that. Strange enough, now here's another people. You really don't find them equal. They just get in your way. You just want them out of the picture. And this is where murder, like they had murdered the other people a long time ago and try to wipe them out. This, like most of your Native American Indians, they try to wipe them out. African Americans was the descendants of the slave, was the second one that they wanted to wipe them out. So they went to, but they went to a whole different realm of killing off black people. And said, well, how did they do that, James? Well, the number one thing they did in certain parts of the South, they would go and this goes back to the slavery. This people have evidence of this. They would go in the slave master's quarters in the middle of the night, and they would take the baby and take the baby to the swamps, in the Florida swamps, the Louisiana swamps, and use them as gator bait. This is how you can't picture this, but this was kind of evil that went in the land from even back then. And then when you was a young child, when a white person would walk down the street in during that time, and I heard even from black and white people tell me this, you had to step off the curb. You had to literally step off the curb if a white person was. If you don't, you could get arrested, or something. That you could get beaten or terrorized. This is what it was. And if you was a black person from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, in the 20th century, if a white person, you had to get behind, and you seen about the Rosa Parks, you had to ride the back of the bus. Now it's funny how the pandemic have us ride the back of the bus because we avoiding the plague. But this was something was already familiar with those who were children at that time. So you had to ride the back of the bus just because the person was black. When you went to a restaurant in different parts of America, you had to get your food and go around. So you didn't have the luxury of going to inside and sit down like you do today. Like even up here in Ohio, where the city where I'm at, Columbus, you had to take your food and go around. And you had to go and sit around because the white people didn't want to see you. They want to see your presence. This is how much power that they have. So therefore, the Martin Luther Kings had to rise up. The Malcolm X had to rise up during that era. So it's like, wait a minute. And all these, like the Black Panthers had to come along. These other groups had to come along to show that the fourth was to fight like you're doing our people wrong, and through your methods. How dare you? So here come all these different situations where the government took interest, like where all these individuals rise up from, and they feared that it was going to be a black messiah. They had to fight what they call a black messiah. He's going to unite all. That there was be an individual that would not all the blacks like that. So what they did, they tried to what they call cut off the head. So that's why they did every manipulative tactic to disband the civil rights people. And if anybody white joined along with it, allied with the blacks, you were also killed. This goes back to this. Everything goes back to slavery because there were white people that could kill. They can get hung and beat and have the same fate for assisting blacks and even getting in the north. You would put the devil thrown in jail, burnt up alive. This is how America was that brutal. into my immigrants this is the country you swore to. This is the history of it. This is why we say what we say. That's what we, and then the spirit of it. How does it play to now, from that time and jump to that time? Well, this where the civil rights workers cut. There was during that time. It was so much lynching doing that from like 1865. Then we come and move to the 50s and the 60s. Blacks were allowed in certain schools. Blacks were not allowed in certain neighborhoods. They always had to be subjugated to the most worst neighborhoods in the worst condition that this country ever did. So every time when someone speak on it, they want to keep a certain group, certain alliances and groups that's spawn out of America, such as the Ku Klux Klan and different groups like this, to put the fear tactic and threat tactic to these individuals, that to squash that. We want to keep them in subjugation manners. Now, and this went all through history. This was in the 60s. And down in the and then they went into the 70s. They still practiced racism, because it wasn't the complete racism never went completely away in the 70s. Despite the civil rights and everything, it never went away. Despite the assassinations of the President Kennedy, it never went away. Despite the assassination of Martin Luther King and Malcolm Evers and Malcolm X, it never went away. Then they assassinated the early Black Panthers. It never. So they figured like this racism never went away, even after they legally tried this evil individuals at that time that were in government set these people up because with some bogus ass charges. They said that you were trying to reveal or come against the Constitution of the law of the United States. This is what they tried to do with the Black Panther. So they said they had to throw something up on them. And it could be something like tax charges or some kind of violation. Even though that these men like the Black Panther Party were operating within the group, they were feeding their own neighborhood. They would take care of their own people in their own community. So this died out. So more abuse. So the 70s came along, the 80s came along, and there was more prejudices was going on, and there were more in different neighborhoods throughout America. America carried this racism. Even in the 80s, there were certain neighborhoods, even in 1980s and the 1990s, that they were, there was one case in New York where, a gentleman that was black talking to the white female, and the whole mob attacked him and beat him down, and it was in upstate New York. This happened in the late 80s. I recall that. In the 90s, and so it went from the 90s until, police brutality, and with the Rodney King. This happened in the early 1990s. So what I'm saying is that this spirit never left. The spirit of racism never left from each time period when it came to African Americans. Not the other Americans that encountered this, but they didn't go through the masses of numbers of what African Americans did. So that's why there had to be a Grand Master J in this time, this era. So Grandmaster J is the man who's seen all this. He's seen everything that was injustices. He's seen how the way it was set up. He's seen how the way it was. But they never would figure that another black man like a Grandmaster J will rise up to intelligence to know their system. And every time the wicked people who come against him, thinking that we're gonna get them out there like that, we're gonna bait them out there like that. That you have a man like Grandmaster J say, hold on, I'm looking at history. I have watched what you've done throughout time and our history. I watched how you use the government. Watch our time and our history. I saw how the way you set these individuals up when they didn't have at that time the information and the laws on what they can do, what is within the Constitution of their rights. What they said what you could do, but technically, they didn't know about the laws. They didn't know how to fight. because they were brought up on bogus charges. So that's why the man had enough intelligence enough to know his rights, but know to go within the boundary. And even then they knew. And the law enforcement community knew, and other people knew, like, hey, according to because they probably call and say, hey, is this lawful for them to do this? Yes, under the Constitution, lawyers said, they call their lawyers under such and such and such and such a law. They could have a group like a black militia. But this sparked all this. What I'm saying, this sparked all this. So it keep until this day. It was a set to be example that when other black people from any part of the world would see this in their country, and they might have been the second, third, fourth class citizen in their own country, felt like they would never get no hope and no justice for them. So Grandmaster Jay, there had to be a man that rise and say, when you see me, it was time you can do the same thing. Go with the confines of the law of your country and protect the concept of your right. So that's why it was a national appeal. This has nothing to do with, just get up and rise and overthrow your. It's not about overthrowing your government. It's about going within the Constitution of your government. That's what it really was. Because as a citizen of your country and citizen of your law, you have the right to, like any other group of people. But here's the thing: when it came to the people with the melanated skin, the darker skin, they're supposed to be uneducated because the past tells them that they never, the mindset never made it past slavery. So therefore, the darker people always, no matter where you go, even though they live the most atrocities of poverty on the planet, they must don't have no education. And this is what's taught. So they feel like these people feel like you have different, and it's not just a black, it's not just a white people thing. Other people pick up this from white people too, that you can go in there and just feel like you can be above and over these people because they don't have no education. They have no background. And so the people who are dark complected people feel like they have no injustice, that this they okay, long as you keep them out of the equation of equality in this earth, as long as you can be like their God, as long as you can command what they do, you can control them, you control their spirit. They will never figure the things out when it comes to rising and knowing that as a human being in this planet, you are not subjugated to being under anybody's authority, only but the one who made you is authority. As a man and as a woman, grown man and a grown woman, you're not what they call feeble-minded. And this is where the term feeble-minded comes from, because when they thought about black people, they thought they were feeble. They came from slavery, and that they would still be feeble-minded. So how did they still be feeble-minded? That they have look how the way the communication skills. You see the slothfulness in the way they talk and the way they dress. And this is what they told the other nations of other people. And this is what was being told. So that's why there had to be a Grandmaster Jay that had to rise in between and say he came from this environment. He know what this environment is, but he has to rise until occasion say, let me get to know what they saying over in that environment. And so sometimes you have to put on a different coat to watch to figure out what's going on. You have to get around the spiritual atmosphere. You got to go into the atmosphere of, yes, I'm educated. We have all these things. What do your people have? Your people have, and they have nothing. You have cheap. And some of us some black people who are educated fell for the bait, not even thinking too highly of their own people. Some people of racism, it has affected them to the point they don't even like their own skin color, because they get their skin color with their class. Some people that don't like their own skin because what they come from. And this was not just taught in this nation; it's embedded in other nations. I've heard it from different other cultures that the darker their skin was, that there was something wrong with their skin. This was something this is a mindset that was put even in the other cultures, whether it was in Latin America, whether it was in the Middle East, whether it was in Asia. It was that the darker you was, it was something wrong with your skin color. And even though they even put this in their own language, and if you hear this story from that, was able to translate you from their language, that's what they were made to feel. They mocked them in different parts of the world, mocked the darkest complected of people in the world. They said, see, they went to some part of the world in Africa and they paint the whole doggone people as dark. So they make them like they were just like they were something out in the jungle, and this is what it was. So basically, what they're saying that they're not. It's okay to make fun of them, but little that they know that the very people you were making fun of had a spiritual connection to the Most High, and the Most High. If you look in your Bible, if you look in the book of Revelation, where it describes there's a being in heaven, it describes from the man. There was a man named John, and he described him as he had. If his complexion is what you think, I'm telling this to the people who got this mindset, that you need to look at the one who you about to see coming to the earth. You about to see the one who's darker than anybody's on this planet, because they said he said when he saw him, from his feet and his ankles were dark as brass. Look, and I suggest you look up what color is brass is, and what it looks like when it's burnt. This is a being. This is coming from heaven. Who is the one? Who is the one that shaped the whole world? Look at it now. Those who you got that had that spirit, you have the inner prejudice. Look at this one. There's a being in heaven that they describe in Revelation, and he had woolly hair, and he described he has a spiritual complexion of the dark burnt brass in heaven. And this is the one to come. So to all these people out here that can't stand the beings who have melanated flesh on, if you can't take what it is to see a person in the natural with spirit, and this goes to all, it's not just a one group of people. If anybody can translate this to their language, if you can't handle this complexion of myself as a being in this planet, what are you going to say about the one that's to come? With half of his angelic kingdom come? Because the angels might look what they appear to be white. The angels might look like, but the one that's coming ain't gonna look like they appear to be white. He's gonna have white garment, but he's gonna have a dark complexion. They're like the Bible is like he's coming out of the sun, like he's been sit next to actually like a sun. Like you go out to the universe and how you see how the sun, how dark, and you stand next to about a certain amount of distance from the sun, you will literally get dark. If complexion is your problem. And see, some people have that part about complexion. That they say, so the complexion, it means that it's less intelligent. It must be he's dark, and it must be he's evil. This is the truth. And so they put it on the people who have what we call melanated skin. So therefore, that's why a man like this had to rise up, because there was in the 21st century, there was still injustices going on, and in the cases like Brianna, Marjorie, cases like these individuals, like any other innocent individuals, was not getting seen, not getting publicized around the world. Why? Because the people that were empowered feel like they're just irrelevant. We're going to just move them out. We're going to gentrify them, move them to another location, because They're poverty people. That's why this man had to answer the call. It's like this was unjustified. This is unjustified to confront this and put this on the world stage. That it was shape up even the way the political world was. This is why this had to happen, people. This has not. This was something that it could have fooled most of us. That's why he had to rise. A man had at such time had to rise because it was something bigger that even and just imagine that to take the call, and it takes a special individual say, knowing that you have to have some faith, knowing that you can, someone's coming after you like they did with Martin Luther King, someone who's coming after them like they did with Malcolm X, someone who come after them that they Marcus Garvey, someone had to come after them like they did Medgar Evers, someone had to come, and many other people way before them, knowing that someone that there's like a Roman government that's coming after you because you are the manifestation of what they fear, but they have to find different ways. And then this is the way how they're attacking the African Americans today. There's 5 ways that but it's in alignment. Number 1, they hit them through the healthcare system. So even when you get treated for certain symptoms, they make you suffer the worst pain till they want you to suffer to death. Number 2 is the judicial system. This is another judicial that they, even to somebody who committed a crime, if you just because you have melanated skin, you supposed to be stay with longer sentences than the average person who commit the same crime. Whatever the offensive is, murder or whatever, you got to pay for it much more time than this other individual. Where this other individual can do 10, 50 years and get parole. This is in the judicial system. This is a fact. And no matter if it's selling drugs or anything like that. Number 3 thing is the educational system. This is how the way they want to control the blacks. Now they tell you what statistic, well, your child ain't gonna amount to nothing. They don't have the learning, the capabilities, because they don't have the skills mindset. And so what they did was when they used to have like vocational training school, they took that out of the schools in inner cities because they didn't want their kids competing with the kids in the suburbs and urban areas. Oh yes, it goes deeper. So that's the third. So that's why some kids in inner city didn't teach trades and things like that. Plus number 3 thing that you did. Then you have the number 4 thing that you did. You did what they call the financial institutional thing. You put black people on a different credit scoring than any other people. And some black people have good credit, but they can find a way to discriminate against you when it comes to that too. They always do. This is the same. That's the 4th system. That's the 4th system that they have done in recent. This is why Grandmaster Jay had to rise up and the Most High had to use a man like this, expose all these wicked demonic systems, and shake the foundation. Then it even goes into politics. 1 is the politics. Number 5 is the politics. Yes, we're a selective individual. Wow, they're like black people rising up in politics. Wait a minute, we gonna give them their politician. They said like they select them their politician, but they got a black mayor. That don't mean nothing. They got a black police chief. That don't mean nothing. They got a black Democratic council. No, they have to go by with the majority of what they say and what they do, because whoever controls the funds, whoever controls the money, whoever controls what they say, them the ones that got the power. They tell you what to do. So you never really, you just a hired. We bring you to the privileged class, but you gotta do what we say because we control you, boy. We control you, girl. We control what you do. We control what you say. This is how the way it goes. You're not free. Despite you say, well, black people, no, they're not. Even at the higher market, they're not. They have to answer to a setting of people. My 9 chance out of 10, No matter if they're Democrat, they're Republican, they're white. And they got to do exactly what they say to do, or they're not getting back in office. So that's five things that they've done to African Americans. That's why they have to be a Grandmaster J to expose, and he has to be the Most High that bring these things to light and operate through the law from the heavenly court into the land to the courts of a land, through the Supreme Court, the appellate court, and everything, expose all this. Then the heavenly court speaks to the courts in his land and say this will be under his judgment. I have to rise a man. I've done it. I send people your way. I send the man of color your way. But but America showed her ugly face. We did it to Colin Kaepernick, but America showed his ugly face. You had to put George Floyd's neck. America still, and many others like him. But you don't understand. You don't understand that this was going on. So this is why the things are happening, what we see now. This is why the protesting is still going on now. Because there's injustice still in the earth. And there's people that are going to keep it still injustice in the earth. This is why racism goes to whole different levels. It's in the 5 things I told you about. That's how they went up. And even if they do have a representative, what they said with James, they had President Obama. They had, what about him? That's their reparation right there. No. Mitch McConnell to say, no. He was selected before he was elected. Again, you got to know what's behind the power, who's behind the money, who he's going to do for our will. And the much money and influence you have, and whatever special interest backs it up, they do what he say. And again, if they have to use an African American man's or woman's death or child to get what they want, they'll do it. So there's two wings are still controlling. No matter it seems like they're your friend on this side, but it's getting the other gender getting passed over on this side, and both sides is playing their part. This is the truth. So this why when this man rose up, he said, "I'm not for either side. I'm for my people. I'm for my people." Wait a minute. We're for your people too. Now now the truth had to come. No, you're not. You expose it. What you're doing. You just acting like you for my people. Because you got to tell these people understand that there's a segment of African Americans are rising and seeing both sides of the equation. Wait a minute. I thought that this group was for us. But here is this group say it's that group over there. No, technically it's this group over here. And both of them are still playing. They're going to the same country clubs. They got the same houses in the most well-founded places in the world. And they laughing at it behind closed doors and open phones. They're not going to tell you this. They're not going to tell you what's behind the wall. Why would they tell you? Why they don't want to see you get equal? Because if you get equal, you become the competition. And a lot of people don't want African Americans to compete like they and that's the last thing they want to do, get some power. Because it's like it would dismiss everything in history. If we could take out the history, then we there was no thing. What they talk about? What are we talking about? Slavery? What slavery in this country? Where's the pictures at? They trying to erase things. This is how clever that these racist people have gotten to be. Okay, yeah, let them erase it. Yeah, let them go ahead. Let them go and tear down several statues, because there's not going to be no proof that there was evil, this much evil in the land, and that we solved it, and we all together now. No. You're thinking with your emotions. You're not thinking with logic. You're not thinking with, if we do this, see, and this is going to be on the agenda. So they can prove that we don't have to account for what the atrocities we have done with these people for decades, from the time they left slavery, every different century and every different decade that's in between. We don't have to pay the price, because we all free now. We all together now. This is what they're trying to do. We have fooled them again. Yes. We don't have to pay reparations to them. Yes. Yes. See, no. We had to. We say that we sorry. No. This was going on. Come on. We'll get it. We'll get a Kamala Harris out there in front. See, she's a woman of color. See, we'll get a President Obama out there. See, a woman of color. What is that? It's called deflect from the real injustices of made while continuously there'll be a high death rate. They're trying to make a high death rate among even in the inner city. They don't care about those individuals. As far as they're concerned, they could just all die off. They don't care from the Democrat side, and they don't care from the Republican side. They don't care about those people, all the shootings that you see, in the civilians in Chicago and in different places like that across this country. They don't care. As long as they get what they want. Remember, we had a black president. We had a black. Now we had a black woman. But it's a sight game, because as long as she go for their agenda. And let me tell you about the woman that's running for president, who is a woman of color, as they say. She don't even consider herself black. Her parents didn't consider themselves black, a black American. Her mother was considered, put on her paper. There's a man that put the article in her birth certificate. On there, Kamala's birth certificate, her mother was listed as white, even though her mother came from India. Her father was listed as Jamaican, and even though he would be considered look like an average Negro, but he was considered Jamaican. This is how the way it is. So when they put on Kamala Harris, she was listed as white. But what happened with her? She went to a black university, even though she's part Jamaican and part Indian. That she looks the part and talks the part, but she don't connect with the American part of black, the historical reasons of Black America. But she used the institution to get educated, and there's people that have done that before, because they had the complexion to the cover. Wait a minute, that's the complexion. But yes, some people don't want to be connected to American blacks, and then some American blacks don't even want to be connected to American blacks. And let me tell you how deep racism is. Racism is so deep that even among blacks, that there are blacks because of their education, there are blacks because of the complexion of their skin, because they're lighter, that they're gonna get a better position in this place, only to get to the top. That somebody, when they get to a little bit of get like what those people who the majority you're around, they kind of let you know. They know what they really think about you. If you're getting into a heated argument, they're going to call you the N-word. Yeah. And they try to put you right back with the very word. They'll call you just being a jerk. You're just being an idiot. No. It don't matter how light-skinned you are. If you got features that look like a black person, they're going to call you the N-word. Some of them who have that ancient spirit that they heard, they can call you the N-word. That's a fact. So it don't matter how much education you do, you still the N-word. No matter how light you are, what your family name is, you still, if you got humility, you got the complexion of this, you still the N-word. That's a fact. No matter if you was raised in the most wealthiest suburb in America, you're still the N-word. Because you're just one of the lucky ones. You're just one of the privileged ones. It may look like that, but in mainstream, the whole rest of America and everything in between, from the big cities to the small towns to the rural areas, you're just black. That's a fact. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to tell you. No matter how articulate your speech is, you're still black. No matter if you was the only one of you're still black. And they kind of remind you that. And how do they remind you that? They'll do it with a joke. They'll joke around you. Oh, come on. Come on now. Come on now. I know what you brothers do. Do that little dance, that little jig. Come on now. Come on, go and get your malt liquor. Come on. I mean, they'll make some silly joke like that. Offensive joke. That's what they do. That's what they do. That's how they view black people. What you see on TV, that's how they view it. If they show some stereotype, that's how they view it. And you think that, well, they laughing at you. That's what they stereotype. And it's not till I seen this when I got to the suburbs, personally myself. I seen this. I experienced this. I know how the way they project it out. They do it subtly. See, they throw it at you because you don't suspect it. So we're gonna put up with some more of this. Hey James, come on over. We can't see you. Well, we can see the beauty of your eyes though. Because you got dark complexion, you know. This what they do. What you mean I got dark complexion? What's wrong with my complexion? Why are you trying to go there and joke about something like that? This is what they do. I'm telling you how it comes in different forms. I'm dropping a nugget. See, I'm telling you about the ones who are really like that, but they like to hide it, and it comes out, and sooner or later, that spirit just come out in a different form. You know, when you go into their atmosphere, majority of them, their atmosphere, you're gonna find a segment of people like that in their atmosphere. You're gonna find it. May not be in everybody, but you're gonna find the ones with the inner part, what they think about people. When you're among them, and the Most High will reveal it, what's in them. Mark my word. As a man of this melanated complexion, you've been on this earth. You've experienced a lot. Sometimes it was good to have that experience to go into, not just live in the inner city, but to learn what was on the side of that fence. When it comes to their schools, their education, and where they live, how they adapt themselves. Because they figure that he will never catch up. Some of them would think he will never know. He don't know our code. Guess what? I caught up to the ones who thought like that. So that's why there had to be an individual like that who had to rise up, because that's their mentality of thinking. We all must be think like that. We all are irrational like that. How did I know this? I've heard it from other people too. Told me secretly. So you see, the changing of the guard is now. When you be in one environment, and you have been in 2 or 3 environments in this country, and you've been around people of that environment, you learn. You don't just learn from the books. You learn from the actions. You learn from life. And even though they say, oh, once you bold enough to call it out, oh, wait a minute, I'm not like that. I'm not like the other people. But yet, when they come into your environment, they're like that. When they see the way you dance, the way you music, the way your style is from the movies and shows and stuff, and they said, man, you know, they act real good. Some of them act, and they what's up? What's up, my dog? Just saying, I'm just chilling. I don't know what. Check that person out. Go around as people, see how they really are. See, they all like that. You know the real deal. The ones that are real and the ones that ain't. So my name is James. Till next time, I want to drop that to you, but I was just going to title this, so hopefully this gets some views. And that's the reason why that there had to be a Grandmaster Jay on the rise. Till next time, you guys take it easy. You be blessed and be alert and be woke.